The news has a little bit of everything in it today. We're going to talk a little bit about civil unrest, a little bit about sports related to COVID-19, and a riddle for you: what actually links most presidents at the modern day White House? So let's get started. One of the big stories in America right now is really a face off between local authorities and federal authorities in relation to a series of protests that have happened over the last several weeks. I have to be careful about the language that we use here because one of the big events that happened over the weekend in cities like Portland and in Seattle is that local law enforcement declared these public gatherings not protests, but riots because of the rise in violence. And we've talked about this over the last week that federal officials and federal forces have been sent to different US cities in response to the rise in violence. And you have two very different pictures of this story emerging. Local authorities, like local mayors in some of these US cities, do not want these federal officials in their area. They say it actually incites further violence. On the other hand, you have federal authorities saying that law and order is not happening at a local level, and they're there to protect property and also protect citizens. So these tensions are coming to the surface, particularly because of the violence over the weekend and because of the local declaration by law enforcement that these protests are riots and not peaceful gatherings. You have the right to gather peacefully in the United States. You do not have the right to riot. So, what we're going to be watching today is that the Attorney General is going to be testifying on Capitol Hill. He will be talking about this very issue. So, we're going to watch for headlines about that. In the meantime, mayors from a lot of these major cities like Portland and Seattle wrote lawmakers in a letter yesterday asking lawmakers to make it illegal for federal authorities to send this support to their areas. So this is a story to watch. Federal authorities can go into local areas for a variety of different reasons legally, but there's a lot of shades of gray there. So again, a big story to watch that's happening in America that's really pulling up tensions that we've seen dating back for decades between a strong federal government and strong local government as well. So a story to watch. In the meantime, we're marking an interesting day in history. Today is important for the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment was added after the Civil War. We often talk about it related to race because of that, because it really defines the rights that are owed to private citizens in the United States. The 14th Amendment in this day in history was officially announced to be added to the Constitution. It is the longest amendment that we've added, and it's one that's often used in a lot of different legal cases, not just related to race, which is really interesting. One case in particular, it's used as part of the law of the land by the Supreme Court, is related to abortion law in America. So we have a little bit more on that on the website because it's an important amendment to know about. In the meantime, I want to talk to you a little bit about sports because Major League Baseball is in its first week and it's already having problems in this abbreviated season due to COVID-19. We're seeing different teams like the Florida Marlins deal with outbreaks. This is causing a disruption and a really big question about whether or not the season can continue. In the meantime, you have football players that are supposed to be showing up to training camp today. So, there is a big question about baseball, a sport that doesn't have a lot of close contact, already dealing with questions of spread of this virus and what happens next. And now, of course, you have football where there's a lot of face-to-face contact, which I think you all know about. So this is important to watch baseball, not just for baseball, but what it means for sports in America overall. Okay, a little bit of a news item and a little bit of a riddle. We heard from the First Lady yesterday that she is announcing a refreshment of the Rose Garden at the White House, a special project. What she's saying she wants to do is return the Rose Garden to what it looked like during the Kennedy administration, where it really became the Rose Garden that we know that's being used for a lot of public events, but also this special place at the White House, which is just steps from the Oval Office. First ladies tend to be more popular than their husbands. They tend to be. That might be also true for most marriages. Just kidding. Don't tell my husband that. But this is kind of a project that doesn't have a lot of news value, but something sort of interesting to know that's happening at the White House that the First Lady is talking about. Here's the riddle. The thing that actually is a commonality between most U.S. presidents at the modern day White House is the presence of roses that have been in the White House gardens to different degrees throughout the years. And listen to this. In the 1960s, when the Kennedy administration was trying to make the Rose Garden really what it is, they dug down 4 feet to add new soil, and in doing so, they cut this like old cable that happened to be, in the ground. Turns out that it was a cable that was buried during World War II as an emergency cable. So when they cut it, the U.S. military was alerted. Everything is fine. Nothing happened. Apparently, even though it was kind of an emergency, everyone was cool about it. So, you never know what you're going to find when you excavate. And that's something that they found back in the 1960s. We'll see what they find this time around. All right, guys, questions and comments, let me know. And as always, more on smarternews.com. Have a great day.